The age of trading hours for income is quietly ending. Humanoid workers are seamlessly integrating into our economies worldwide. This transition marks a fundamental shift in how value is created and distributed. In the near future, your financial security will not stem from labor hours. It will derive from assets you own, particularly humanoid capital. This truth will redefine economic participation for generations to come. This is not speculative fiction from a distant tomorrow. Japan has already deployed humanoid caregivers in nursing homes across the nation. Companies pioneering this technology are now valued in the tens of billions. Humanoids perform their tasks without demanding wages or benefits. All economic value they generate flows directly to their owners. This dynamic accelerates wealth concentration at an unprecedented scale. If this future concerns you, take action in this moment. Hit subscribe to join this essential conversation. This is Humanoid Soul. Imagine a factory worker standing beside a humanoid assembly line partner. The machine operates with tireless precision through the night shift. The human receives a wage that fails to keep pace with inflation. Now envision that same worker owning a fractional share of the humanoid. Her income would grow passively as the machine produces value, yet systemic barriers make such ownership nearly impossible for her. Investment minimums are set deliberately high to exclude average earners. Financial institutions prioritize clients with existing wealth. True democratization of humanoid capital remains an unfulfilled promise. This exclusion is not accidental, but engineered into the system. Capital flows upward through ownership structures designed for concentration. The divide between asset owners and laborers deepens daily. We stand at a pivotal moment in economic history. One path leads to shared prosperity through inclusive ownership models. The other, to a rigid hierarchy, where birth determines economic destiny. The choice we make today will echo through centuries. Will humanoid productivity uplift all of humanity or enrich a select few? Our collective actions will provide the answer. Consider Knight R.A., a warehouse logistics specialist in a fully automated facility. She monitors humanoid teams that move goods with flawless efficiency. Her responsibilities shrink as their capabilities expand month by month. Naya's salary has remained stagnant for over 3 years now. Meanwhile, the humanoids under her supervision generate millions in annual savings. Not a single dollar of that value returns to her pocket. She discovers online platforms offering fractional ownership in humanoid fleets. Advertisements promise steady monthly returns for machine labor. The entry cost equals 6 months of her entire income. Determination drives her to research alternative paths to ownership. She finds worker cooperatives attempting to pool resources collectively. Regulatory obstacles and high fees stifle their progress repeatedly. The system appears meticulously designed to maintain her in perpetual labor. Ownership feels like a distant dream reserved for others. Her hope for financial freedom dims with each passing paycheck, yet a quiet resilience persists within her spirit. She begins meticulously documenting economic flows around humanoid operations. Her notes reveal stark patterns of value extraction and control. Nai's experience is not isolated but emblematic of millions. Countless workers face similar crossroads as automation accelerates globally. Their individual choices will collectively shape our economic future. This is the human face of the humanoid revolution. Behind every statistic lies a person navigating profound uncertainty. Their struggles present the defining moral challenge of our era. The question is no longer whether humanoids will transform labor markets. It is who will capture the value they create. The answer will determine the texture of our shared tomorrow. Naya clocked in for her evening shift at the Omni Logistics Hub. The air hummed with the quiet efficiency of humanoid workers. She felt a familiar pang of obsolescence watching them move. Role had diminished from supervisor to observer over 2 years. The humanoids required minimal oversight, their programming flawless. Management hinted her position might be eliminated next quarter. She walked the aisles between towering shelves of goods. Humanoids glided past her with silent precision, arms full of packages. Their movements were fluid, almost graceful in their mechanical perfection. Naira remembered when this warehouse employed 200 humans. Now, only 20 remained, mostly in monitoring roles. The humanoids handled 90% of the physical labor effortlessly. Her paycheck barely covered her small apartment and basic necessities. Rent consumed 60% of her income each month. Savings were a distant memory, let alone investments. During her break, she scrolled through financial news on her tablet. Headlines celebrated record profits for Omni Logistics shareholders. The article mentioned new humanoid deployments increasing margins. A sponsored ad appeared for Humanoid Shares, an investment platform. It promised passive income from owning fractions of humanoid laborers. The minimum investment was $5,000. Nee calculated her savings. $320 total. She would need over 16 months of saving every penny to qualify. The math felt cruel and designed against her. LYRAS serial number was etched on her wrist plate. Naira had named her out of loneliness, though it was against policy. Lyra never spoke unless spoken to, her responses programmed and polite. Yet Naira sensed a strange comfort in her presence during long shifts. The humanoid was a constant in her transient world. One night, Naira asked LYRA a question beyond protocol. You ever wonder what it's like to own yourself? LYRA's response was immediate and scripted. I am property of Omni Logistics Corporation. The answer chilled NYRA, despite the warehouse's warmth. She realized both she and LYRA were owned in different ways. One by debt and necessity, the other by legal contract. Nay began researching ownership models during her off hours. She discovered that humanoid owners received monthly dividend checks. These checks grew as humanoids worked more hours. She found forums where small investors shared their returns. One user posted a screenshot of a $200 monthly payout from a single humanoid share purchased for $3,000. NYRA's heart raced at the possibility. $200 could cover her grocery bill for a month. The idea of passive income felt revolutionary to her constrained life. She visited a financial advisor recommended by a friend. The advisor listened patiently to her dream of humanoid ownership. Then he explained the accreditation requirements she didn't meet. Fractional ownership platforms have minimum net worth thresholds, he said gently. You need at least $50,000 in liquid assets to qualify. Nurse's face fell as she calculated her debt instead. She left the office feeling smaller than when she entered. The path to ownership seemed blocked by invisible walls. Her labor felt increasingly worthless in this new economy. Back at work, she watched Lyra effortlessly lift a heavy crate. The humanoid's strength was calibrated perfectly for the task. Nice's own back ached from years of similar labor. She wondered who owned Nice labor output. Was it a distant shareholder sipping champagne? Or a retirement fund providing comfort to strangers? The value flowed somewhere, just not to her. Naya started a side hustle delivering food on her electric bike. The gig economy offered flexible hours but no benefits. Each delivery felt like running on a treadmill going nowhere. After 3 months, she had saved an additional $400. Her total savings reached $720. Still far from the $5,000 minimum, but progress felt tangible. She discovered a cooperative called Worker Share, attempting to pool resources. Members contributed small amounts toward collective humanoid ownership. Naira attended their virtual meeting with hope. The cooperative leader, a woman named Siren, explained their model. 50 members would pool $25,000 to buy one humanoid. Profits would be distributed equally among members. Naira felt a surge of optimism for the first time in years. This seemed like a viable path to ownership. She signed up immediately and committed her savings. Siren was charismatic and knowledgeable about economic systems. She spoke of reclaiming value from corporate control. Her vision resonated deeply with Naya's frustrations. Cooperative needed 49 more members to launch. Naira recruited 2 friends from her warehouse job. They joined enthusiastically, sharing her dream of passive income. Weeks turned into months as they slowly gathered members. Progress was slower than Naya hoped, but steady. She attended every meeting, taking notes diligently. CERN revealed a complication during one session. Regulatory approval for their ownership structure was delayed. The government required extensive documentation for collective asset ownership. Naira felt anxiety creeping back into her chest. Delays meant more time in her diminishing job. She worried Omni Logistics would eliminate her position before they succeeded. She worked extra shifts to save more money. Her body ached with fatigue, but her determination held firm. The dream of ownership fueled her through exhaustion. One evening, Lyra malfunctioned briefly during a routine task. Her arm froze mid-motion for exactly 3 seconds. Naira reported it immediately to maintenance. A technician arrived and diagnosed a minor software glitch. He reset Lyra's systems with a handheld device. Humanoid resumed work without further incident. Naira asked the technician about Lyra's maintenance costs. He explained that Omni Logistics covered all upkeep centrally. Owners never paid for repairs or upgrades. This detail fascinated Knight. Ownership meant pure profit without operational burdens. The investment seemed even more attractive after this revelation. She shared this insight at the next cooperative meeting. Saren nodded thoughtfully and added it to their promotional materials. Small advantages mattered in their uphill battle. The cooperative finally reached 50 committed members after 6 months. They celebrated virtually with toasts of cheap wine. Naira felt genuine hope for the first time. Saren initiated the paperwork for their first humanoid purchase. They targeted a logistics model similar to Lyra for familiarity. The price was $28,000. Each member contributed $560 from their pooled funds. Naira had saved exactly that amount through sacrifices. She felt proud of her contribution. Regulatory approval finally arrived after months of waiting. The cooperative was legally recognized as an ownership entity. It transferred funds to the humanoid manufacturer. Delivery was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Nur counted down the days with nervous excitement. Her life was about to change fundamentally. 2 days before delivery, Nyra received an email from Omni Logistics. Her position was being eliminated effective immediately. Automation had made her role redundant. She sat on her bed staring at the termination notice. Panic surged through her body as she calculated her finances. Unemployment benefits would cover only half her rent. She called Saren in a state of distress. The cooperative leader listened calmly and offered reassurance. "This makes our mission even more urgent," Saren said. "You'll soon have passive income." Naira clung to those words like a lifeline. The humanoid's arrival became her sole focus. Survival depended on this investment succeeding. The delivery day arrived with gray skies outside her window. A transport vehicle arrived at the cooperative's designated facility. Nair watched via livestream with bated breath. Technicians uncrated the new humanoid, model Lyra-7. Its design was identical to the Lyra she knew from work. A strange sense of familiarity washed over her. The humanoid powered on with a soft chime. Its optical sensors glowed faintly blue for initialization. Then it stood motionless, awaiting programming. Sir began the configuration process remotely. She uploaded work protocols for warehouse logistics tasks. The humanoid's movements activated smoothly and precisely. Naira felt tears well in her eyes watching the machine work. This was her asset, her ticket to stability. The emotional weight of ownership overwhelmed her. The cooperative assigned the humanoid to a partner warehouse for immediate deployment. Rental income would start accruing from day one. First dividends were projected in 30 days. Naira spent her unemployed days refreshing her banking app. She imagined the notification of her first dividend payment. The wait felt interminable, yet full of promise. She visited the warehouse where her humanoid worked, observing from a distance. Seeing Lyra-7 move crates filled her with pride. This machine was partly hers. Security guard approached her after an hour of watching. "Visitors aren't allowed in operational zones," he said firmly. Naira apologized and left, feeling foolish. Back home, she received an email from Saren with financial updates. The humanoid had completed its first shift successfully. Projected monthly return was $180. Nyra calculated this would cover her groceries and utilities. Rent remained a challenge but felt more manageable. Hope felt tangible for the first time in years. She began applying for new jobs with renewed confidence. Knowing she had passive income changed her perspective. She could afford to be selective in her search. Interviews went poorly despite her experience. Employers preferred candidates comfortable with full automation. Knight's human-centric skills were deemed outdated. Rejection emails piled up in her inbox daily. Her savings dwindled with each passing week. Anxiety about rent payments returned with force. The day of the first dividend payment arrived. Nye checked her account at midnight precisely. No deposit had appeared yet. She waited until morning, refreshing constantly. At 9 a.m., a notification finally appeared. The deposit amount was $42.30. Confusion replaced her excitement. She expected $180. The discrepancy felt like a betrayal. She called Saren immediately. SEREN explained the payment was net of fees and maintenance allocations. Platform fees, regulatory compliance costs, and reserve funds reduced the gross return. Naya's share was correct per contract. Naira read the fine print she had signed months ago. Deductions were listed but buried in complex language. She felt naive for not understanding the terms fully. The $42 covered only a fraction of her needs. Disappointment settled heavily in her chest. Ownership was not the salvation she imagined. She attended the next cooperative meeting with questions. Other members expressed similar disappointment with their payouts. Zern defended the fee structure as necessary. Without these reserves, we couldn't sustain operations, Zern argued. The system is designed to protect long-term viability. Naira wondered who it really protected. Naira researched fee structures of other ownership platforms. She discovered that accredited investors paid lower fees. The system favored those with more capital from the start. This revelation deepened her sense of injustice. The barriers weren't just entry costs, but ongoing structures. Ownership came with hidden tolls for the small investor. She considered selling her share to cut losses. The secondary market for fractional ownership was illiquid. Buyers were scarce, and offers were far below purchase price. NYRA was trapped in an ownership that barely sustained her. The dream had become another form of bondage. She felt foolish for her initial optimism. LYRA7 continued working flawlessly at the warehouse. NYRA sometimes watched live feeds of its operations. The machine generated value effortlessly while she struggled. She realized the humanoid was more free than she was. Had no debts, no fears, no existential dread. Its purpose was clear and uncomplicated. Naida's unemployment benefits ran out after 3 months. She faced eviction notices from her landlord. The $42 dividends were a cruel joke against her reality. Desperation drove her to seek Saren's advice again. The cooperative leader suggested taking a loan against her share value. Noir refused, fearing deeper debt. She found temporary work cleaning offices at night. The pay was cash under the table, no benefits. Body ached more than ever, but she had no choice. One evening, she passed a luxury condominium tower downtown. Through a window, she saw a humanoid serving drinks at a party. The owners laughed carefree. Nai wondered if that humanoid's labor funded her $42 dividend. The connection felt abstract yet deeply personal. Value flowed upward invisibly. She returned to her small apartment feeling the weight of the system. Ownership had not liberated her but revealed new layers of control. Game was rigged from the start. Naira decided to document her experience publicly. She started a blog detailing her journey into humanoid ownership. Readers responded with similar stories of disillusionment. Her blog gained modest traction among displaced workers. They shared strategies for navigating the new economy. Community formed around shared struggle. CERN reached out after reading her posts. She accused NYRA of damaging the cooperative's reputation. NYRA stood her ground, demanding transparency. The conflict divided the cooperative membership. Some sided with Siren's authority. Others supported Nine's call for reform. Tensions rose at meetings. Nair proposed a fee restructuring to benefit small investors. CERN rejected it, citing contractual obligations with the platform. Change seemed impossible within the system. Nair realized individual ownership was not the solution. Collective action might be necessary to challenge the structures. Her perspective shifted from personal to systemic. She connected with activists working on economic justice issues. They discussed policy proposals like humanoid dividend taxes. Nay's lived experience lent credibility to their cause. Meanwhile, LYRA7 continued generating value for the cooperative. NYRA's share still produced meager dividends. She used the money for bus fare to activist meetings. She learned about legislative efforts to regulate humanoid ownership. Proposals included mandatory profit sharing with displaced workers. Corporate lobbyists fought these measures fiercely. Naya testified at a city council hearing about her experience. Her testimony was calm but powerful. detailing the illusion of accessible ownership. Officials listened attentively. The hearing made local news, bringing attention to the issue. Naray received messages from strangers sharing their stories. She felt part of something larger than herself. CERN contacted her with an ultimatum: retract her statements or be expelled from the cooperative. Nira chose expulsion without hesitation. Her integrity mattered more. Losing her share meant losing even the small dividend. Nira faced complete financial precarity once more, but she felt strangely free from the illusion. She doubled down on activism, organizing workers displaced by automation. Their movement grew, slowly but steadily. Hope transformed from personal to collective. Nira often thought about Lyra, the original humanoid, from her job. She wondered if it still worked at Omni Logistics. Its value flowed to unknown owners. The system continued operating smoothly, indifferent to individual struggles. Nira's journey revealed a fundamental truth about the new economy. Ownership without power remained a hollow promise. Nira stood before a crowd of displaced workers in a community center. Her voice was steady as she shared her story of failed ownership. The room listened in rapt silence. She described the promise of fractional humanoid investment, then the reality of fees, barriers, and diminished returns. Her honesty resonated with their lived experiences. After her talk, people approached her with their own stories. A former teacher displaced by tutor bots, a nurse replaced by caregiver humanoids. Their pain was universal. Naya connected these individuals into a support network. They shared resources and job leads when possible. Solidarity became their currency in a cold economy. She learned about a policy proposal called the Humanoid Dividend Act. It would tax corporate profits from humanoid labor, distribute funds to displaced workers as basic income. Nira threw her energy into advocating for this legislation. She organized letter-writing campaigns and town halls. Her blog became a hub for the movement. Corporate lobbyists fought back with well-funded opposition campaigns. They framed the dividend as theft from innovators. Media narratives shifted against the proposal. Nira faced online harassment for her activism. Threats arrived in her inbox daily. She persevered, knowing the stakes were too high to quit. Saren reached out unexpectedly one evening. The cooperative leader, wanted to meet in person. Naya agreed cautiously, curious about her motives. They met at a quiet cafe away from prying eyes. Saren looked tired, her usual confidence diminished. She ordered tea without speaking first. "I've been thinking about what you said," Saren began softly, "about the fees and the system being rigged." Nura waited, skeptical of her sincerity. Seren admitted she had believed in the cooperative model initially, but pressure from platform providers forced compromises. Her hands were tied by contracts she couldn't break. "I'm trapped too," Saren confessed, tears welling in her eyes. "The system owns me as much as it owns you." NYRA saw genuine pain in her expression. They talked for hours about the structures that constrain them both. Nira realized Saren was another casualty of the system, not a villain, but a participant. Saren offered to provide internal documents about fee structures, evidence that could strengthen Nai's advocacy work. It was a risky move that could cost her position. Nira accepted the offer with gratitude. This alliance could shift the balance of power. Two former opponents united against a common foe. The leaked documents revealed predatory fee schedules for small investors. Large investors paid a fraction of the rates. The disparity was intentional and systematic. Keira published the documents with analysis on her blog. The story went viral within economic justice circles. Mainstream media picked it up slowly. Omni Logistics issued a statement defending their practices as standard industry procedure. They threatened legal action against NYRA for defamation. She stood her ground. Public opinion began shifting as more people understood the mechanics. The humanoid economy's dark underbelly was exposed to sunlight. Pressure mounted on policymakers. Naya was invited to testify before a state legislative committee. She prepared meticulously with activists and lawyers. Her testimony would be pivotal. The hearing room was packed with supporters and opponents. Corporate representatives sat in expensive suits, smug and confident. Naya felt small but determined. She spoke for 10 minutes without notes, her voice clear and calm. She described LYRA 7, and the $42 dividend. The human cost of abstract profits. Legislators asked probing questions about alternatives to taxation. Naira proposed worker cooperatives with transparent fee structures, models that prioritize people over profit. A corporate lobbyist interrupted her testimony with objections. The chairman allowed him to speak, his words slick and dismissive. Naira listened patiently. When given rebuttal time, Naria dismantled his arguments with facts. She cited Siren's leaked documents as evidence. The lobbyist had no credible response. The hearing ended with bipartisan interest in the proposal. Naira felt a flicker of hope for real change. The system could be challenged successfully. At night, she received a threatening message from an unknown number. "Stop your activism or face consequences," it read. Naira reported it to authorities, but felt fear. She increased security measures around her apartment. Friends took turns staying with her for safety. The movement was worth personal risk. Siren disappeared from public view after the leak. Naya worried about her safety but received one encrypted message. "I'm safe. Keep fighting." The legislative process moved slowly through committee reviews. Naira organized rallies to maintain public pressure. Media coverage remained mixed but growing. A breakthrough came when a major tech CEO endorsed the dividend concept. His support shifted corporate narrative slightly. Other leaders followed cautiously. Naira met with the CEO's policy team to discuss implementation details. They proposed watered-down versions that protected corporate interests. She pushed back firmly. Negotiations were tense, but productive over weeks. Compromises were made, but core principles remained intact. The bill gained enough support to reach a vote. The night before the vote, NYRA couldn't sleep. She walked the city streets, thinking about NYRA and all displaced workers. Their futures hung in balance. She passed the Omni Logistics warehouse where it all began. Humanoids moved behind glass walls, silent and efficient. Their value flowed upward, as always. Noir wondered if Lyra still worked there, and the thought brought a strange sense of connection. Machines as witnesses to human struggle. The vote day arrived with heavy media presence. Nair watched from the public gallery, hands clenched tightly. Every second felt like an hour. The tally came in favor of the bill by a narrow margin. Cheers erupted from supporters in the chamber. Naira wept quietly with relief. The Humanoid Dividend Act was signed into law 3 months later. Implementation would take a year, but the precedent was set. A crack in the system's armor. NYRA's activism made her a minor public figure. She declined most interview requests, preferring to work behind the scenes. The movement needed no celebrities. She helped establish a nonprofit to assist displaced workers. They provided legal aid and financial counseling. Naira served on the board voluntarily. Her own financial situation remained precarious but bearable. Small donations from supporters covered her basic needs. She lived simply and purposefully. YRA 7 continued working, now under new ownership after the cooperative dissolved. YRA sometimes wondered about its fate, but let go of attachment. The machine was just a machine. She received a letter from Siren 6 months after the law passed. Siren had left the cooperative world entirely. She was studying law to fight for economic justice. Their paths had diverged, but their purpose aligned. Naira felt gratitude for the unexpected alliance. Change required unlikely partnerships. The first dividend payments under the new law began flowing to eligible workers. NYRA qualified and received a modest check, covered her rent for 1 month. The amount was small but symbolically powerful. It represented recognition of displacement and shared prosperity. Nair framed the check on her wall. She knew this was just the beginning of a long struggle. The law could be weakened or repealed by future administrations. Vigilance was necessary. Naya mentored young activists entering the movement. She taught them about systemic thinking and patient persistence. Change was a marathon, not a sprint. One protege asked if she regretted her journey into ownership. Naira thought carefully before answering. "I regret the illusion, but not the lesson," she said. The experience taught her that ownership without democratic control was empty. True power came from collective action and policy change. Assets alone couldn't liberate. She often reflected on the core economic shift underway. Income from ownership was real, but distributed unjustly. The battle was over. Who owned what? Naira visited her old warehouse one last time before it fully automated. Human workers were gone entirely now. Only humanoids remained, moving in silent harmony. She felt no bitterness watching them work. They were tools shaped by human choices. The morality lay in how we structured their ownership. A security humanoid approached her as she lingered too long. Its voice was polite but firm. "This area is restricted to authorized personnel only." Naya nodded and left. Walking away, she realized she had come full circle. From worker to failed owner to activist. Her identity was no longer tied to labor or assets, but to purpose. The city skyline glittered with lights from corporate towers. Somewhere in those buildings, decisions were made about humanoid deployment. Naira knew her work was far from over. She returned to her apartment to prepare for the next day's meeting. Policy details needed review before a strategy session. The movement required constant nurturing. Nai's story spread through word of mouth among displaced communities. She became a symbol of resilience and clarity. Her name carried weight in certain circles. She avoided the spotlight, preferring substance over fame. Real change happened in committee rooms and community centers, not on stages. The nonprofit she helped build grew steadily over 2 years. They assisted thousands of workers navigating displacement. Small victories accumulated into momentum. Naira never owned a humanoid again, nor desired to. She understood now that the goal wasn't personal ownership, but equitable distribution of value. The system needed redesign. She followed developments in humanoid technology with detached interest. New models emerged with greater capabilities. Each advancement raised stakes for workers. Naya advocated for stronger regulations with each new deployment. She testified at hearings and wrote policy briefs, where expertise was sought by lawmakers. The movement faced setbacks when a recession hit the economy. Corporate lobbyists used the downturn to argue against worker protections. Progress stalled temporarily. Naira refused to be discouraged by cyclical politics. She focused on building resilient community networks that could withstand economic shocks. Grassroots strength mattered most. She reconnected with former warehouse colleagues who had scattered after layoffs. Many struggled with depression and financial ruin. Naya offered support without judgment. One friend, Marcus, had become homeless after his savings ran out. Naira helped him access shelter services and job training. Their friendship deepened through hardship. Marcus eventually found work maintaining humanoid systems. The irony wasn't lost on them. He serviced the machines that displaced him, but the job provided stability. Naira visited him at his new workplace once. Humanoids lined up for diagnostics like patients in a clinic. Marcus moved among them with practiced ease. "It's not what I dreamed of," he admitted, "but it pays the bills." NYRA nodded, understanding the compromise many had to make. Survival first, dreams later. She continued her activism with renewed focus on mental health support for displaced workers. The psychological toll of obsolescence was profound and often ignored. Naira collaborated with therapists to develop counseling programs. They addressed grief, identity loss, and anxiety. Healing was part of economic justice. Her holistic approach gained recognition in academic circles. Researchers studied her model for community resilience. Nay shared insights freely without seeking credit. Years passed as the humanoid economy matured. Ownership remained concentrated, but the dividend provided a safety net. Inequality persisted, but extreme poverty decreased slightly. Nay aged gracefully, her hair turning silver at the temples. She walked with a slight limp from years of physical labor. Her spirit remained unbroken. She often thought about the future generations navigating this economy. Would they accept ownership as destiny, or demand something more humane? The question haunted her. Naira began writing a memoir about her journey. Not for fame, but as a historical record. Future activists might learn from her successes and failures. The manuscript grew slowly between her other commitments. She wrote in the early mornings with tea and quiet. Words flowed from lived experience. She described Lyra, not as a character but as a symbol. The humanoid represented both threat and opportunity, a mirror reflecting human choices about value. Naira completed the manuscript on a rainy afternoon. She read the final page aloud to herself. The words felt true and necessary. A publisher accepted the book with modest expectations. It found its audience among those questioning the economic order. Sales were steady, if not spectacular. Naira donated all proceeds to the nonprofit she helped build. The money funded new programs for displaced workers. Her legacy was service, not profit. She received letters from readers worldwide sharing their stories. A teacher in Japan, a factory worker in Germany. The struggle was global and interconnected. Naira responded to each letter personally when possible. Connection mattered more than scale. Small acts of solidarity built movements. In her 70s, Naira's health began to decline. She stepped back from frontline activism, but remained an advisor. Younger leaders carried the torch forward. She watched from her apartment window as the city evolved. Humanoids became more integrated into daily life. Their presence was normal, even mundane. Naira felt no triumph or defeat in this evolution. Change was constant. The task was to shape it toward justice. Her work was a single thread in a vast tapestry. Who do you think will own the future? Let me know in the comments. She often wondered if LYRA-7 still operated somewhere. Probably decommissioned years ago, its parts recycled into new models. Machines had shorter lifespans than humans. Naira made peace with the transience of all things. Her impact would outlive her in policies and people. That was enough for a meaningful life. On her last day, surrounded by friends and movement comrades, Night smiled softly. She had fought for a more just economy and contributed what she could. Her final thought was not of humanoids or ownership, but of human connection. The bonds forged in struggle were the real assets worth owning. If this opened your eyes, share it. Not for views, for the ones still working while others own. Copy Ask Quen Explain.